of the Panda group, and then Paul Jankowski and Greg Andersen. I want to just get right down to it. And we're talking about the Heartland, and we're hearing more and more about the Heartland in Middle America, or mindset of Middle America. And these three gentlemen either precedently founded organizations to educate those like myself about this particular cohort. And I think, David, you are a client of Greg's.
I am.
So let's just start by having you help us understand who we're talking about when we say the Heartland.
I'll start because I live there. Live in Omaha. I think that the Heartland is less defined by geography than it is about sort of a mindset. And I think that mindset is largely built around pride of place. And I think that sense of identity and where people are from is a big deal. And I think that shapes what people aspire to, what their hopes and dreams are about the life that they want to lead. And I think it's a recognition that not everyone aspires to a New York or an LA thing, right? A lot of people that live in the, quote, Heartland are really content with a different path and a different definition of success. And I think it's largely built around who they are and where they're from and that pride of place.
I agree. I live in Nashville. I've done business on the coast, most of my life, and came home one day and said, you know what, I got to wear more black, walk a little faster, talk a little faster when I go to New York. Come home, that's not really who I am. So I got on my F-150, did a drive around the middle of America, which is typically thought of when you say the Heartland. Would you say flyover states mainly? I think it's bigger than that, and I think it is also a mindset, but I also believe it is somewhat geographically defined. So Midwest, Southwest, Southeast. South of Tampa doesn't make it. Arlington, Virginia doesn't make it, but the rest of it is kind of this big geographical mindset where core values play a key role in buying behavior, where lifestyle touch points are really valuable there. So that's how I define what I call the new Heartland.
And I, born and raised in the Midwest, and 4 years ago moved to Los Angeles. So I don't know if I fit your definition, Greg, at some point. But so I maybe was kicked out of the Heartland. No. I practicing advertising in Chicago for many, many years, and living there, raising family there, never realized that I was amongst a homogenous group, frankly. It was just where I lived. It was where I worked. It was where I raised my kids. Then I moved to California to join Panda, Panda Express, Panda Restaurant Group. And the questions I was asked by my partners at work were really surprising. I was now in a group, by the way, and Panda Express was founded by Chinese immigrants. So it's a husband and wife who own the company. They own all 2,000 restaurants. So it's a very Asian company. It's a very, I am the white Midwest Dutch guy, am in the minority at our headquarters. And the questions I was asked about you people, for the first time made me think, wow, I'm now in a class of folks who people don't understand. And I think that's what we're talking about today.
Absolutely.
And I think at any given point in our history, we could have this same panel, and instead of Heartland, you could say working mothers. You could say African Americans. You could say New Yorkers, right? You could fill in that blank, and the conversation would be very similar, I think. So I'm struck by the fact that what it's all about is us understanding people we don't know.
So what I'm hearing is that this Middle America, this Heartland, is an enigma to be studied, right? Like any other cohort that we don't know. I guess my next question is, so what? Why do I care? Why is this group important? Why should I spend time, money, digging into who they are?
Well, I mean, millennials are the in vogue, population group to talk about. But last I checked, there was a huge segment called America that seems largely misunderstood, more misunderstood than millennials are today. And 92% of the U.S. population lives outside of the top 10 cities in the country. So the influence and buying power of a group of people that are deprioritized or misunderstood or labeled as one homogeneous group when it is in fact a quilt work of highly sophisticated, interconnected segments of people just like everywhere else is incredibly important to understand for brands and businesses to genuinely scale across America.
Why should you care? That's a great question. Why should you care about 60% of consumers? Should you care? Yeah, you should care. Why should you care about a cultural segment that is largely overlooked and misunderstood? There's a lot of upside and a lot of opportunity for brands who do care and go beyond caring, taking the opportunity to learn and understand and immerse yourself in this culture. It's a massive, massive culture that really will pay off for people who understand it. Unfortunately, Dave's comment, it just kind of gets dismissed. It gets stereotyped in a way that really hurts brands. And we're here to say, this is a thing, it's time to pay attention to it.
Yeah, for Panda, the brand's been around 40 years, and we have we started in California, we had 500 restaurants in California, we have 2,000 across the country. So we know California better than we know the rest of the country. So as we choose to grow, and we're moving northeast in our growth pattern, we need to know more about the people we market to, because that's different. The people in California are second, third generation Panda customers. If anything, we have to undo some perceptions they have about the Panda they grew up with. But now here in the rest of the country, we're creating brand perceptions for the first time. The only way you do that effectively is if you understand who it is you're talking to, right? It's no different than anywhere else.
So misconceptions and stereotypes. I think of Middle America, I see, okay, nobody judge me. Trailer parks, whatever, red hats, country music loving. That might be the correct stereotype, but what am I missing? What am I not seeing, hearing, and understanding about this cohort?
You want to?
Don't
I've
I
got
got
it. Yeah, you go for it.
Like my head's
Oh
exploding.
my God, everybody one at a time.
It's good though. It's a provocative question, Jane.
That's what I was told to be by Rashad this morning. So
Stereotypes kill. But
Yeah, stereotypes kill. Okay, well, the state that has the highest per capita consumer spending in the country, North Dakota. Right? So
Seriously?
Seriously.
wow.
Right? Now, first of all, you have to know that, right? And if you know that, you know, well, there's people there that have a lot of disposable income, and they're spending more of it per capita than anyone else in the country. And then you have to know why. Why are they doing that? Because there's an oil and gas boom going on there, right? So there will be more technology startups in the Midwest in the next 5 years than there are in Silicon Valley. What does that say about entrepreneurialism and innovation that's happening in the Midwest that you don't know about? There are more billionaires per capita in Omaha, Nebraska than any other city in the country. So, I mean, there's all these things that are really important to understand, to not make the mistake of thinking that you have to dumb down your strategy or dumb down your work to connect with, Bubba.
Communal entrepreneurship, technology, fashion, you would not believe what's coming out of the middle. Trends, we're not all about trend following, we're about trend setting in a lot of cases. Greg mentioned millennials in the middle. There's a few really key areas to know about millennials in the middle versus millennials on the coast, where they are in their life, starting their life, where they're buying homes, having children a little bit sooner. Great opportunity to learn about millennials in the middle versus millennials on the coast.
And if you want to sell red hats, you need to find where those people who buy red hats are, right? And I mean, just like any other product, and sorry to be on that theme, it is about targeting. There are plenty of people, and by the way, Greg from Nebraska, that's the color of their state school. A lot of red hats in Nebraska, yeah. But it is a matter of targeting. How do you find those folks? And boy, and if you're selling a product that markets to people who live in a trailer, insurance in Florida, I don't know the case.
Well, that would be a hard sale right now, but yes.
All right, but I mean, you have to know who they are and what is that one insight where you can't ask why anymore that you can build a message on, that you can build a campaign around.
So there've been some aspersions, casting aspersions on us elitist urban or coastal folks. Creative agencies, other than, Michael Fanuel will tell you about Chicago, Minneapolis. There is some stuff going on in the middle there, really good stuff. But are the coastal agencies set up to have the right strategies to connect with this consumer? What do they need to do? And then we ask the question is, who's doing it well? It's a lot of questions.
Being the recipient of a lot of creative on the coast that was coming down to the middle, it was very interesting. There was an obvious disconnect on a lot of cases, but not all cases. So we look at that as an opportunity. So we created something called a cultural immersion. So you asked how can agencies, how can brands better understand it? Come down here, get to know us, let us help you, let us immerse you in the culture, because it's all about the culture. So I would think that would be one thing. And we mentioned who's doing it right. I just wrote about Walmart's 5-chair spot that I thought was brilliant. I don't know if you guys saw it a couple weeks ago that came out kind of under the radar. But I thought that was a really good example of someone doing it well.
Yeah, I think to do it well for the coastal agencies, and by the way, like, I am a coastal agency guy, right? Like, I spent 23 years in New York at BBH and then in Los Angeles. So, I mean, I've fallen into the trap myself, right? And working at agencies where you want to innovate, right? And you want to be the first to do something, that becomes the thing, that becomes the behavior you get into, because that's how you're measured by your colleagues in the industry and things like that. But that's not really creating work that people talk about. That's creating work that the industry talks about. And there's a big difference in that thinking. And when you start thinking that way, you start to think that the world that you live in a New York or in LA or whatever, is the world, and it's not. There's the old famous New Yorker cartoon, The View from 11th Avenue, right? And it's just not the case. And so I think even the culture of agencies need to change because of the arrogance that goes with, well, because we live the life we live, everyone wants to have that life too. And not everyone wants to live in the mid-century modern house and drive the cool vintage muscle car. They've got a different set of aspirations. And, there's been articles written about, like, I'm a Democrat, but, you can't, if I'm a Republican, I can't identify as a Republican in an advertising agency because I will be marginalized. If that culture exists in a business that's designed to understand people in general, and that bias exists in an agency, inside the four walls of an agency, like, how are you ever going to get past that as a strategist and create an authentic understanding of a broad swath of people that are hugely important to your client's business? And so, just get out there. I don't know that something like pride of place, and that sense of, well, I'm not going to go to a big city because the cost of living is way higher now. It's prohibitive to get there. There's more things happening in my state or in my city that I may just stay here now and make this place cool, as opposed to thinking I have to go somewhere else for cool, is a big deal. But that doesn't show up in data. That doesn't show up in MRI. That doesn't show up in the DSPs and things like that, where we're trying to get insights from today. It's just about going out there and being part of it.
Panda's obviously doing it well.
You know what? We're learning, right? Every day we're learning. And I think and one of the things that we saw, and full disclosure, you said at the beginning, Bailey Laeuerman's our current creative agency, and one of the reasons that, and I led the search 3 years ago when we brought them in, that one of the reasons we hired them was to help us to have a sounding board of how another section of the country might view our brand, because we didn't think we could do that ourselves. So beyond them helping us understand consumers in a different part of the country, in the Midwest and in the East and Southeast, we actually use them to call us on our own BS about the things that we think everybody's going to want to care about this aspect of Chinese culture, because being authentic to Chinese culture is important to us. Whether it's the authenticity of the dishes that we create, because we're really oversensitive about fake mall Chinese food. Don't anybody say that to me, okay? But it is American Chinese food. So just an example last week, and I'll stop, is that we were working on we have a dish coming out in the first quarter, and it's going to be delicious, and we talked about focusing on ingredients. And one of the ingredients that really speaks to the authenticity of this dish are fermented beans. I do too. And they said the foodies will love that. Anybody say, but then you go, there are probably many consumers, not just in the Heartland, but all over the country, who might go, I'm sorry, what? Fermented what? And that's a good thing? And it really took them holding the mirror to us. So an agency can be anywhere in the world and do that, but hold the mirror to us to say, you know, I get why you think that's important, but we don't think that's going to resonate.
You're a good client.
Yes, he
Definitely. Of course he is.
Some days better than others.
Yeah.
Right.
And can I just say one thing as well about,
Yes.
doing it well and recognizing these guys as good clients? Given the heritage of their brand, one of the things that I think that Panda does particularly well is serve as an ambassador of a, quote, foreign culture into America, right? And, the things that the brand does around Chinese New Year and, helping people across the country just open the aperture of appreciation and understanding of something that is foreign to them. I think that they do really well, and they do it in a really open, approachable way. One of Andrea, Dave's counterpart, talks about the brand welcoming people into Chinese culture that are looking at it through the window, and welcoming them in to understand it. And I think that that's a really cool thing from this brand that has to create really broad appeal.
So culture is an interesting concept, because talking about Chinese culture, and I'm listening to you guys and thinking that this is a lot like when youth marketing first came on the scene, right? And we had to sort of pull that aside and study that as a culture and say, what are those things that get that group excited? And this is a completely different culture that we should probably be looking at from an anthropological standpoint. So what are some of the key hallmarks of this culture right now to tell me, so I could walk out of here and go, yeah, you know what, I know Middle America better than I did before?
I would start with a couple things. One is the role core values play in buying behavior. Core values, and it really goes to what you said about being a Democrat. So faith.
Can I stop you there? Oh, I was going to say, can you define the values?
So
Sorry.
values, faith, friends, not religion, community, family, patriotism. Those were the words I heard when we went out and did this road show at the beginning. So it does not matter what you believe. It does not. You don't go. It's not about getting pouring rights in a mega church. It's not about that. It's about understanding the role core values play, and the core values are not exclusive in the middle, in the new Heartland. They're a little more at the surface, right? That doesn't mean they're exclusive, but they play a high role. The second piece is the lifestyle touch points: music, food, hunting, fishing, college sports over pro sports, fashion, technology, key lifestyle touch points. So if you're really trying to build advocates, you have to understand how people are spending their lives. Core values, lifestyle touch points, all under the cultural umbrella will really help you get in and understand this group.
Yeah. I'd say walk out of here believing that there's not one Middle America, that it is a really diverse, complex group, and I would say that even parts of California are probably more like the Midwest than they are like Los Angeles, and so, the diversity of geography and place and the businesses and culture and things like that is really super important to understand, and again, that sense of pride of place and things like that, it might be surprising to you. Okay, so we're going to do a quick quiz, right? So there are 55 foreign languages spoken in the homes of public school students in the San Francisco, Oakland area. Okay, let's use Topeka, Kansas, all right? So how many think in Kansas, public schools, the number of foreign languages spoken in those homes of public school students are 1 to 10? 10 to 50. 50 to 100. Over 100. It's over 100. And the reason it's over 100 is because there's a huge immigrant population that's coming into Middle America because of the affordability of living and the quality of life there. So you look at places like Minneapolis or Omaha or Kansas, it's an incredibly culturally diverse part of the country now, where there's this huge infusion of different culture and languages and things like that that's happening. And so to think that Middle America is a super whitewashed group of religious zealots is so inaccurate from what's happening in America today.
Thank you, Greg. Do we have any questions for this panel? We have some extra time. Yes, awesome, a question.
I bet a large portion of this room read Hillbilly Elegy, and it seems to be the touchstone for a lot of this conversation. Where would you compare and contrast in terms of what you're seeing that is valuable insight versus where would you maybe debunk a little bit?
Debunk Hillbilly Elegy? Is that what you're saying?
Just in terms of what you're saying and where, I guess, I'll
So-
ask the room, did y'all read Hillbilly Elegy?
So let's assume you're experts in one way and the author of Hillbilly Elegy is an expert in a different way. I haven't read it, so I can't comment, but anybody read it?
No.
Yeah, I was just.
Okay,
we were
you're the
just
one that
talking
can
about-
answer the question
All right.
then.
No, I think Greg touched on it. It's a sense of place where you're from. So Hillbilly Elegy is about guy grew up in Appalachia, moved to Middleton, Ohio, was industrial, that whole thing, and he went to Yale, got educated at Yale, and wrote a book. Amazing story, but it all goes back to his roots in Appalachia and the industrial Ohio area. That's very similar. A great stat, what Jane and I were talking about earlier, I think it's 71% of people in the Minnesota, kind of upper Midwest, don't leave their home state of birth. That blows my mind. Why should we care as brand marketers? Well, we should really care because that goes back to the community connection, the multi-generational connection. I'm Uncle Paul to my best friend's daughter. It's not about these stereotypical nuclear family ideas, right? So if you know that people aren't leaving the Midwest, shouldn't you look at that a little bit differently in how you reach out to them, perhaps?
One more question, right here.
A number of you talked about the idea of traveling and getting out there or cultural immersion and so on. So my question is, what places do you think that those of us that live in coastal cities should go and visit for ourselves to start to experience the culture?
Boy, how much time do you have?
Yeah. So, if you
Omaha,
had-
Nashville, those areas. I mean,
Kansas City,
Yeah.
Denver's actually really super cool right now. More college graduates moved to Denver, Colorado than any other city in the country last year.
I cut them off my map.
Yeah.
So Colorado leans more to the West Coast
Yeah,
for
no,
me
that's
than
for
it
sure.
does, but it's a cool city.
For
My
sure.
sister lives there.
I think Omaha is actually a pretty good proxy. I'm not just saying that because I'm from there, but it's close to 1 million people. It went blue if you want to define it by politics, but within an hour drive of Omaha, there's 100 small towns of less than 1,000 people. You know, and so you can get a really interesting perspective and proxy of America just by, you know, going in and around those sort of cities that we've talked about.
But there's so many places, and they're so different. And again, if one trip isn't going to do it.
No.
For example, in Kansas City, they say pop. In St. Louis, they say soda. St. Louis defines themselves much more closely with the East Coast. Kansas City much more with the Midwest. Different parts of the regions are very different, and it has to be a road trip. You can't fly into a place and fly out because you have to get out into a small town. It's like going to New England. Boston is a fantastic city. There are places in New Hampshire that are really cool. You know, as you get out to really experience the people and the food and the way they interact. So I mean, it would be a road trip, and I think you would have to you'd have to dot several of the places to do it.
If you're going to have meat outside at a party on a weekend, you're going to prepare it outside. What do you call that? So we eat barbecue. You have a barbecue. Just a silly nuance in what Coke, pop, I mean soda, pop, and in the South it's Coke. Sorry, Pepsi.
Right,
client.
no.
Regardless of what it is.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Regardless of what it is.
Right,
Yeah.
so it goes back to that, study it like it's a foreign country, not foreign country, but a foreign culture to some degree.
Yeah,
Culture.
it's an immersion, you know, and it's not just a visit. It's like really getting in there and understanding all aspects that influence people's behavior in their life and what, you know, and what they believe in.
Well,
and that's our jobs, right? As planners, like that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
And,
do your job, right? I mean, you are the best in the world at this, at understanding distinct cultures and what differentiates them, and what are the nuances, and how do you uncover the insights to those new. This should very much be a preaching to the choir conversation.
I think you are.
Yeah.
And the title of this is Data and Humanity. We're very much talking about the humanity and old school data points, right? You know, the interaction, the humanity. Is there another question? One? Yeah, okay, wait, sorry, blue shirt dude, sorry.
So this is definitely for David. As you scale a company like Panda Express across the country, do you find yourself trying to cater to the differences in perception that exist across regions, or trying to identify the commonalities and speaking to those? So what's more important, understanding the differences or understanding the similarities? And what do you speak to?
So from our media budget, we lean into the latter. We do believe there are very distinct regional differences in the U.S., and our plan going forward is to speak more discreetly into those regions. But because of what our budgets are, we tend to look for psychographic commonalities there and focus on what binds. I know you guys are from Calgary. We're moving into Canada as a restaurant and trying to get a feel for. Or no, I'm sorry, the Calgary guys are behind. So, but we were just talking earlier during the break. We're trying to move into Calgary. That's a whole different world that we don't know anything about. You know, so yeah. So it's a case. I do think it's a both, but the practicality of what we're able to spend tends to draw us from what we'd really like to be doing. Yeah.
I have two questions left. Excellent ink man over here.
Hi.
Excellent.
Hello. Is that working? So I grew up in a small town. We just got our first Panda Express. Very exciting.
Where?
Heber, Utah. And I lived out here for a long time and worked in advertising and moved back there when I started a family. My neighbor who wears a red hat when he mows his lawn is going to have one very specific Facebook experience when he logs in. The agency I work at in Salt Lake City is not unlike Vice or Edelman where I worked at here in New York. They're going to have a very different Facebook experience. You touched on this with psychographics, but what other steps are you guys taking to parse apart the complexity? And are you digging into data to understand the varieties within Middle America. Anything we could take back or look at tactically.
We try to look at behavior. I mean, behavior is a great equalizer. At some point, there's what people are saying, there's what they're doing. And to the extent that we can try and move the movable in the areas to get a behavior to shift a little bit, that seems to be the truest for us so far. We don't want to enter into those conversations. We're not a political organization. We don't choose to be. As individuals, we all have our preferences, but that seems to be the equalizer for us. I don't know what you guys have any.
Well, I'm going to go to the last question, and then, because I'm doing that cardinal sin right now. I know it was out there somewhere. No? Gone? Did they get up and leave? Okay, we're done. I'm sure these guys would love to answer any other questions. Yeah. It's a fascinating topic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just have one thing.
Sorry.
Just
or one more.
Have a healthy immunity to the culture within your agency and what it thinks is important. I mean, our job as planners is neutrality, and have a curiosity about everyone in the country and everyone, and the importance that they can bring to your client brand.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.